Welcome to High Cheese with Darren Maloney. Today is Friday, March 25th, 2022. Okay, let's go right to Ukraine. On Thursday, Biden flew out to Brussels to meet in an emergency NATO meeting. And as a result of that meeting, Biden committed an additional $1 billion in humanitarian aid to Ukraine, while he just confirmed the $2 billion in military aid to Ukraine. Now, this is on top of the $6.5 billion in military assistance and $6.7 billion in care for refugees that was budgeted for in the 2022 federal budget. Now, Zelensky has come back, and, he's starting to wear a little thin on me in the sense that we always see him. He's always asking for more and more and more. Is he really addressing the needs of Ukraine at this point? So here's what he said. He says he wants 1% of every member's defense budget to go to Ukraine. Now, I would just calculate it, just thumbnail calculation. I think the 2020 Defense Department budget was $700 billion. So 1% of that is $7 billion. That's quite a bit of money just coming from the United States. And if you add up what the United States has already given him or committed to him, plus what was committed in the 2022 budget, he's getting more than that. And Zelensky wants that from every member of NATO. So that's quite a bit of money that he wants from these defense departments. And look, if he can get it, great. But what is he ultimately doing in the end? And I'll get to that in a few minutes. But the one thing that really was embarrassing for the Biden administration is this whole line that sanctions are not a deterrent. So Joe Biden has come out and said sanctions are not a deterrent. Sanctions are not a deterrent. And let me just go to this clip where he states this.
Sanctions never deter. You keep talking about that. Sanctions never deter.
And I think what Biden is trying to say is that the threat of sanctions does not deter another country from going to war. But wait, his administration says the exact opposite. So let me go to a montage of clips that I got. I think it was from the RNC website. And it starts with Vice President Harris, then goes to Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken. And they say the complete opposite. And there's a couple of other talking heads from the administration that say the same thing. So let's go back to it and then we'll discuss.
The purpose of the sanctions has always been and continues to be deterrence.
The purpose of the sanctions, in the first instance, is to try to deter Russia from going to war.
The president believes that sanctions are intended to deter.
They're meant to prevent and deter a large-scale invasion.
We want them to have a deterrent effect.
The sanctions are designed in the first instance to try to deter Russia from taking further aggression,
as well as our efforts to both try to deter Russia through sanctions.
Well, what is it? Is it a deterrent or not a deterrent? And why are they having this conversation in public? Is there a disconnect from the White House, the State Department? This is a sign of weakness. This is a sign of confusion. And this confusion that the United States is presenting could result in more Ukrainians getting killed. I just wanted to play a clip of Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, he's so frustrating. Some things he's okay with, but other things he is just way off base. And this one clip I'm going to show you is he's really off base. So let me play the clip and we'll get back.
The idea that Ukraine can win. I embrace it. Ukraine can win. They can win.
Well, Lindsey, what definition of winning are you using? Does it mean a total extraction of Russia from Ukraine? What is it? You're claiming that Ukraine can win, but what is it? And all you're doing is amping up the United States with your comments that could result in a war. So it clearly behooves you to define what a victory is in this case for Ukraine. I just want to switch you to an article. This is from Foreign Affairs magazine. It's a globalist magazine. And here's what I sense. I sense that the narrative for a victory for Ukraine is starting to be defined. And the problem is it just flies in the face of what reality is. And let me just read some of this article from Foreign Affairs. And again, it has to, the whole narrative of this article is that, well, Putin's losing, he's not gaining ground. His initial objective was to take Kiev, which wasn't the case. So let me read a little bit of this article. And again, this is in context that Putin is losing this war. He's not meeting his objectives as defined by Foreign Affairs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to juxtapose this article with an article from NPR, another globalist media outlet, and show you where this whole narrative, how the other side loves to this narrative, and they create the narrative, and they slowly bring these narratives into the vernacular of American topics. So let me read this, where the article says here. It says, Putin likely has three core aims at this point. Now, at this point, the assumption is that Putin's losing this war. One is to formalize Crimea's incorporation into Russia, a signature achievement of his presidency in Putin's eyes. Perhaps the annexation of the Donetsk and Luhansk region, only a part of which were occupied before the 2022 invasion, will get folded into this demand. Relatedly, Russia may also push for a land bridge from Moldova to Mariupol, depending on how the war goes. A second aim is to establish Ukraine's neutrality, which can mean either its inability to join NATO and to enter into the treaty alliances of his choosing, or its demilitarization, as Putin has put it, presumably the elimination of its military capacity. Indeed, Putin might seek both of those outcomes. In a less drastic scenario, neutrality could also mean limitations on certain weapon systems and the prohibition of foreign bases in Ukraine. Finally, Putin will want to constrain or to block Ukraine's integration into European institutions, especially those tied to the European Union. Now, this article was dated several days ago. And what I'm going to switch you to, and again, my whole premise here is that they're trying to define a loss for Putin is a settlement equal to what Putin originally asked for. So let me read this article, and this is from NPR. I think I mentioned it in previous episodes. It says, fourth thing Russia wants right now. And this is from January 24th, before the invasion. This article lists four things. It says, one, Russia wants to guarantee Ukraine can never join NATO. 2, Russia wants NATO arms out of Eastern Europe. 3, Russia wants a ban on NATO missiles within striking distance. And 4, Russia wants autonomy for Eastern Ukraine. So there's very little difference between what the settlement that Foreign Affairs is saying Putin could get and what Putin wanted originally. So why is this settlement, as defined by Foreign Affairs magazine, a loss for Putin? Because they're trying to fool you. Now, Putin may get more out of this. He's likely going to get Mariupol. He has pummeled that city into rubble. Now, again, I think in my last episode I mentioned that Mariupol is a bridge city between the eastern areas of Ukraine that identify as being Russian. And recently the Russian Duma accepted them as a separate state. And Crimea, which is a little bit more to the south, which Russia annexed in 2014. And this is what bothers me We've already got the narrative of a Putin loss, even though he won, and I'm not rooting for Putin. My point is that this was entirely unnecessary. Zelensky misread the NATO, he misread the EU, and he misread Russia. And people are trying to make him up as a hero. Maybe he's a little brave. He's in relatively safe in the capital while the rest of the country is fighting. And he's trying to do everything that he can to get arms for his country. It's likely he's not going to win. The Russian army is just too big. And Russians' tactics are just going to pummel your cities into the ground. So I just want to switch you to an op-ed piece that came out today or yesterday in Bloomberg. It's by Neil Ferguson. Neil Ferguson, I had played a clip from him several episodes ago, and he's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, which is a somewhat conservative think tank. And let me just read a little of what he says here. Essentially what his premise is that the Biden administration wants to pursue a policy in Ukraine that essentially bleeds Russia dry. They took a similar policy in Afghanistan in the 80s. They were just going to pump enough money into Ukraine, just enough where Ukraine really couldn't win, and it wouldn't be enough in order to start an all-out nuclear war or third world war, but it's enough to keep Ukraine in a defensive position and just to keep Russia in there and just to bleed them dry. Because the end game for them at this point is to get rid of Putin. So essentially what Ferguson is saying is that this is just an attempt to bleed Putin dry. Not to help Ukraine, but the objective is to just bleed Putin dry with the hopes that he'll get overthrown. So let me just read a couple of paragraphs from his op-ed. It says, prolonging the war runs the risk not just of leaving tens of thousands of Ukrainians dead and millions homeless, but also of handing Putin something that he can plausibly present at home as a victory. Betting on a Russian revolution is betting on an exceedingly rare event, even if the war continues to go badly for Putin. If the war turns to his favor, there will be no palace coup. And he goes on to say in his conclusion, he says, history talks in the corridors of power, but it speaks in different voices according to where the corridors are located. In my view, and I really would love to be wrong about this, the Biden administration is making a colossal mistake in thinking that it can protract the war in Ukraine, bleed Russia dry, topple Putin, and signal to China to keep its hands off of Taiwan. And that's his conclusion. He's not saying that we have to amp this up and create a third world war. He's just saying that the policy right now is to bleed Putin dry, is hurting the Ukrainians. And again, I think I said in my last episode, somebody has to sit Zelensky down and say, look, right now this is as good as it gets for you. It's not going to get better. So it behooves you and your country to pursue a settlement, and the settlement may not be in your own personal best interest. And here's a story that I think that a lot of the media didn't pick up on for whatever reason. And it was about a week or two ago that Zelensky banned 11 opposition parties. And the interesting thing is that there were 11 parties that were banned, but he didn't ban the Swoboda Party, which is the neo-Nazi party in Ukraine. And it was 1 or 2 episodes ago I had mentioned that Ukraine does have a Nazi problem. It does. It's been reported. Mainstream media already acknowledges it. They're just not covering it. And I was wondering why he would not ban the neo-Nazi party while he banned 11 other parties in Ukraine. And it happened to be up in the corner. It was during the interview that I was watching of Senator Lindsey Graham. They were showing footage in the background. And it was footage of Mariupol. And the footage was obtained from the Azov Battalion. Now, the Azov Battalion is the Ukrainian Nazi battalion that's fighting in Mariupol. I didn't know that they were defending Mariupol. So think about that. You've got neo-Nazis defending Ukraine, yet the media is ignoring the fact that Ukraine has a Nazi problem. And this is really problematic, and I'll tell you why. Russia really has a problem with Nazis. Look, we understand the history of the Nazis and what they did to Europe, in particular, the Jewish people of Europe. It's a terrible thing, and we all dislike them. But Russia has a particular bone to pick with the Nazis, and I think it irks Russia and it irks Putin that there still are existing Nazis in Ukraine. You have to understand that Russia was attacked by the Nazis in World War II. And there were Ukrainian Nazis or Ukrainian Nazi sympathizers that were very helpful in the Battle of Stalingrad. Now, Stalingrad was a major, major battle where over 1 million Soviet soldiers were killed. 800,000 Nazi soldiers were killed, but 1.1 million Soviet soldiers were killed. And that battle lasted quite a while. It was from August 42 to February 1943. And along with that loss of life in the military, you had 40 to 50,000 people, civilians, that were killed from the nonstop bombing of Stalingrad. So I got a feeling that, and I hate to say that, is Russia looking at a little payback here in Mariupol? Are they going to level Mariupol because you've got Nazis defending it? Is this payback for Stalingrad? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But it's probably incentive to Putin and the Russians that that Mariupol is being protected or defended by Nazis. Now, an additional note, too, is that, look, you have to understand is that this Zelensky is not a purveyor of democracy, a purveyor of freedom. He may have been elected democratically, but you have to understand they may have a little different perception of what democracy is. Now, for example, recently, Zelensky just banned 3 opposition TV stations. Apparently, they were pro-Russian or gave out non-pro-Ukrainian information. So he banned that. And it was a year ago that Zelensky put under house arrest a pro-Russian politician who recently escaped. And let me read this. This is from the Jerusalem Post. It says, the Ukrainian opposition politician Viktor Medvedchuk has escaped house arrest, Ukrainian Interior Ministry advisor Anton Garashchenko said on Sunday. Medvedchuk, the leader of Ukraine's opposition party, For Life Party, had been under house arrest since last year after the authorities opened a treason case against him. Medvedchuk, I'm sorry I'm butchering his name, but it's my first run with this name. He was a pro-Russian figure who says Russian President Vladimir Putin is his godfather to his daughter, denies any wrongdoing. In connection with the real danger to life, as well as the need to ensure his protection, Medvedchuk was evacuated to a safe place in Kiev. He has been under house arrest since last May, facing accusations of treason and attempting to plunder state resources in Crimea, a part of Ukraine which Russia annexed in 2014. His arrest riled the Kremlin last year, and news of his possible escapes comes as Russia unleashed a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. British intelligence believes Russia has intended to install a pro-Russian puppet government, a claim that the Kremlin has brushed off. So there we go. I'm not making any judgments on Zelensky, but before we start making him as some hero for democracy, so we shall see. Here's the way I look at this thing, and maybe it's too harsh, but you look back 30, 40 years ago, and you look back at how law enforcement used to handle the mafia. And when there were these mafia hits on each other, one godfather would put a hit on another godfather. The local police, they got involved, but their attitude at the time was, well, they're both bad guys. Let them knock each other off. Let them kill each other. Who really cares in the big picture? But they're not going to bend over backwards for two criminals going at it. And I think we have to take a similar attitude here, that ultimately we want what is best for the Ukrainian people. Remember, the Ukrainian government is one of the most corrupt governments in the world. And Russia is too. So let's keep that in perspective when we're making decisions. And my position is the longer this thing is dragged on, the longer that the Ukrainian people will suffer. All right, let's take a quick break. Okay, welcome back. The next thing I wanted to talk about is today was the consecration of Russia by the Pope. And I think that whether you're Catholic or not, you have to be a little disturbed how the press has covered this. And let me just get into one article. It was from Slate Magazine. Slate Magazine is a leftist magazine. Let me just go to this one article. And the article it's written by Molly Olmsted. And it came out yesterday. Essentially what a consecration is. Pope and bishops get together and ask for the blessing of God and Mary and the protection of, in this case, Russia from evil. And again, I'm not asking you to believe in being Catholic to understand what I'm trying to say. My point here is that if they can do it to Catholics, they can do it to you, any Christian. So let me just get into this article. And the article, the title of the article, the headline says, Pope Francis's response to Ukraine has tapped into one of Catholicism's deepest conspiracy theories. So now Christians are conspiracy theorists. That's what the left and that's what the media views Christians. Conspiracy theorists. Let me just read a little bit of the article. It says here, the Vatican announced last week that Pope Francis has invited all bishops and priests of the world to join him in prayer for peace and in the consecration and entrustment of Russia and of Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The prayer, which is to take place Friday afternoon, which is today, seemed on its face to be an uncontroversial sign of support for the Ukrainian people. But the news sent shockwaves through a certain segment of the Catholic Church. The story goes back to 1917, when Mary appeared to 3 shepherd children in Fatima, Portugal, in what is considered to be the most recent major apparition to be officially confirmed by the Vatican. Mary gave the children prophecies related to the Great War and a promise to perform a miracle on October 13th. When that date came, thousands reported seeing the sun dance in the sky. The children were also given 3 secrets, apocalyptic visions, and global prophecies that 2 of the children who died in the 1918 influenza epidemic would never be made public. The 3rd child, their cousin, Lucia dos Santos, would not divulge the first 2 secrets until the 1940s. The 3rd wouldn't be revealed until the turn of the century. The 3 secrets were cryptic. First, the children were given a vision of hell. Second, they were warned that another, even worse world war would come. Remember, 1917 was World War I. And a third, they were shown a pope slain at the foot of a cross. This last vision is commonly thought to allude to the assassination attempt of Pope John Paul in 1981. And the ambiguity has fascinated Catholics and Catholic conspiracy theorists for decades. But it is the second secret that concerns here. Sister Lucia, by then a Carmelite nun, wrote in her 1941 memoir that Mary had told the children of a way to avoid an either further devastating war. And she says, "To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If they listen to my request, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will scatter her errors through the world, provoking war and persecutions of the Church. The good will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and it will be converted, and a certain period of peace shall be granted to the world." I think it was in 1984 there was a consecration, and many Catholics believe resulting from that consecration of Russia was the fall of the Soviet Union. And I'm not asking you to believe this. And believe you me, there are many Catholics that do believe this. And I hope I explained it well. But my point is that the left and the media view Christianity as conspiracy theorists. Now, we all understand, whether we're Catholics or Protestants, that there is biblical prophecy. And Christians believe this. Christians believe that prophecies in the Bible will come true. But to the media and to the world, you are nothing more than conspiracy theorists. And as Christians, we have to be aware of this. I won't tolerate it. I don't think you should. We're not going to allow anyone to define our Christianity, whether it's coming from left-wing magazines or the secular world. We're just not going to tolerate that. Okay, let's switch to the hearings of the Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. And several points I just wanted to make about the hearings. The first one, look, I said in prior episodes that I have a problem by the Biden coming out and saying he just wants an African-American woman. And my problem isn't that she's African or female. My problem is that the pool that he selected her from is just extremely small. And my concern is, are we getting the best candidate? She may be adequate, but are we getting the best candidate? And look, I'm a numbers guy. And if you're going to, let's take a look at this from the numbers. African Americans make up 14% of the population. And I'm assuming that half of that 12% is male and half of that 12% is female. So we've got 7% of the population that is African American and female. So let's just extrapolate those numbers and apply them to the pool of candidates that Biden was choosing from. So instead of the large pool, we can assume that the pool of candidates is around 7% of what the larger pool should be. So he's only pulling his candidates from a small, very small pool of potential candidates. And again, it's not a black-white issue. It's an issue of whether you are getting the best candidate. Again, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she may be adequate, but is she the best? We'll never know. Now, if Biden came out and said, yeah, she's the best candidate, we looked at the entire pool of potential candidates, and Jackson's the best candidate, I'd accept that. But we just don't know today. Okay, the one other thing that concerns me is when Biden said that he wanted a Supreme Court candidate with a judicial philosophy that suggests that there are unenumerated rights in the Constitution, and all the amendments mean something, including the Ninth Amendment. Now, what the Ninth Amendment says, it says, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Essentially, what this says is that people will be given additional rights above that which is explicitly found in the Constitution. So people have implied rights. And the problem with someone that is going to push for these implied rights are people that are going to push for alphabet rights or rights of a transgender swimmer to compete against real women. And I just get a sense that Jackson is going to be a Supreme Court justice that will have a very liberal position on the implied rights of people. It would be never ending. And her response, and let's go to the clip and then we'll come back, because her response to Senator Blackman, what is a woman, is very telling when it's juxtaposed with the Ninth Amendment. So let me just go to this clip and then we'll come back.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
And that was Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. I had referenced her as Senator Blackman, and my apologies. But listen to this. She does not even know or know how to define what a woman is. Here's a person 51 years old, and she doesn't know whether she's a woman. You can assume that. She thinks she's a woman, but she needs a biologist to define what a woman is for her. I mean, you would think after 51 years, a person is well-rounded enough to determine what a woman is, what a man is. And because she doesn't answer it, or she doesn't know, when you match that with the Ninth Amendment, you kind of figure that she's going to lean toward giving people implied rights that necessarily wouldn't get it under normal circumstances. Now, in a related subject, she couldn't answer a question from Senator Kennedy about when life starts. Now, I know that's a little more nuanced, and I would assume, again, someone at 51 years old would have a general idea when life starts. She said she didn't know. And again, I do find that disturbing. And the other question I wanted to ask her, I wish I was up there, is that she had represented terrorists from Guantanamo Bay. You know, again, a period of time when she was a defender in the federal government. Some of the time that she represented him was when she was not a government employee. She was working in the private sector. So she did represent terrorists. And she also, in her brief, called the President of the United States war criminal. But the question I wanted to ask her, if she would be willing, given the opportunity, to represent any of the J6 detainees. That's what I would have liked to know, and I wish someone had asked that question. Now, additionally, the other thing I wanted to talk about, too, is that her judgment on sentencing, this whole issue with sentencing those caught with child pornography is just startling. She consistently gave child pornographers sentences lower than that which was recommended by the prosecution. And her rationale was really twisted. And this concerned me. Her rationale was that she gave child pornographers lower sentence than what was recommended is because when the child pornography laws were written, it was before the advent of computers. And because it's very easy to get child pornography today because of computers, the amount of child pornography has no bearing on what your sentence is going to be with her. And her rationale is, well, it's easy to get child porn, so I'm not going to add to his sentencing because of that. That's just bizarre. So say a teacher molests a child. Are you going to be easier on him because he's around kids much more than somebody who worked in an office that molested children? That seems to be what your rationale is. If it's easier for you, if you're surrounded by more kids, you should get less of a sentence. That just doesn't make sense. And that's what really concerns me. Well, it appears that she's going to get confirmed. Joe Manchin came out today and said that he would vote for her. And that was the only question mark, because this is going to be voted along party lines for the most part. There's still a couple of questionable Republicans, Mitt Romney, Murkowski from Alaska, and I think there's one other one. But they apparently have enough Democratic votes with Manchin. And that would result in a tie if there was a party line vote, and Kamala Harris would come in and break that tie. So it appears that she's going to get nominated. The committee vote on her is going to be April 4th, and the confirmation vote on her in the full Senate should be about 2 weeks later. So we shall see. Thank God it's just replacing another liberal. And continue your prayers for Clarence Thomas. From what I hear is he's fine, but again, continue your prayers for him. And I hope he gets well soon. Oh, before I forget, YouTube banned episode 16. Apparently, something about election misinformation. Well, all I can say to my YouTube listeners, if this is going to continue, we probably should just start weaning ourselves off of YouTube on plenty of other platforms, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Rumble, Podbean, and many more. So, again, if this will continue with YouTube, let's just start weaning ourselves off of this site. Again, if they would be a little more democratic and a little more open, YouTube would be a fine place. But, hopefully they won't ban any more of my episodes. But episode 16 is banned on YouTube. So we shall see. One thing I wanted to talk about, Donald Trump sued Hillary Clinton and the DNC over the Russia plot in the 2016 election. I just want to go over this a little more. I think I want to get into this in a little more detail on my Tuesday episode. But let me just read this to you. And this is from the New York Post. It says, Trump sues Hillary Clinton, DNC over unthinkable Russian plot in the 2016 election. It says former President Donald Trump on Thursday filed a $24 million lawsuit alleging that Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee launched a wide-ranging, unthinkable plot in 2016 to smear him and his campaign as colluding with Russian officials. And I'll get more into that. Looks like it's fun. Okay, let's go to business. One thing I just wanted to talk about is the European Union struck a deal with the United States to supply natural gas, liquefied natural gas, to Europe. Initially, the initial agreement will see the U.S. provide the European Union with extra gas, equivalent to around 10% of the gas it currently gets from Russia by the end of the year. So it's going to hopefully supply Europe with 10% of the gas that is normally supplied by Russia. And then they are setting up a task force. And again, it says here, the U.S. President Joe Biden and European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen announced the formation of a joint task force to bolster energy security for Ukraine and the EU for the next winter and the following one. Now, just my experience when they talk about forming a task force, when governments and politicians really don't want to move on something, they always say we're going to set up a task force to research something. So essentially, they really don't want to do this. And the 10% that the U.S. says it's going to supply really isn't that much. So again, I'm a little suspect about this because when I hear the term task force, it just means delay. Let's kick the can down the road. And that's what it appears that they're doing here. But we shall see. But one thing I do know, if ultimately we start replacing Russian liquid natural gas with American liquid natural gas, our prices here are going to go up unless the Biden administration allows additional drilling. So I just don't see natural gas prices normalizing if they're going to get more natural gas from the United States without more drilling. So you want to hurt us more, Biden? Move ahead with this without allowing more drilling. The other item I just wanted to talk about is that the Russian stock market opened up again this week. And they opened up on Thursday. And they ended the day up 4.4% on Thursday. And the market was as high as 12% on Thursday. Today, Friday, March 25th, 2022, the market was down 3.6% in Russia. I guess the ruble has bounced back a bit. I think it was up about 20% since its initial collapse. I think it was 40 or 50%. But it's bounced back a bit. It's not to the point where it was. I think it was at 75 cents, and I think it's trading about 92 cents right now. So we shall see with that. Again, it's going to be really interesting to see how these sanctions affect Russia. Okay, let's go to mortgage rates. This is an important thing right now. There's two things that came out today. It says mortgage rates soar to closer to 5% in its second huge jump this week. And it says the average rate for the 30-year fixed mortgage shot significantly higher Friday, rising 24 basis points to 4.95%, according to Mortgage News Daily. The quicker than expected rise in rates has weighed on demand for mortgages and refinancing loans. With both rates and prices considerably higher, the median mortgage payment is now 20% higher than it was a year ago. Now, this is going to have an effect on housing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Higher mortgage rates damper the price of homes. And again, I've been saying for people that have bought homes over the past few years, I feel sorry for you. I don't think you'll ever get any return on those homes that you bought. And my recommendation, again, I'm not a financial advisor, but if you're looking to buy a home, just sit and wait. Prices are going to start coming down. And people say, oh, well, the prices are going down, but your mortgage rate's going up. Yeah, they're going down because your mortgage rates are going up. And I firmly believe that it's not dollar for dollar. So if your mortgage rate goes up 5%, doesn't mean the value of your home is going to go down 5%. It's likely much more. The value of the home being sold is going to go down more than 5%. That's just the way the market works in real estate. A lot of it is psychological. Now, we saw the run-up over the past 2 years in real estate because it was psychological. People were panicking over the pandemic, and you had low interest rates. So you had emotional buying. So at the same time, you're going to have emotional selling now. And what you're going to see is inventory rise and rise and rise. And this leads you to my next article. Again, this is from CNBC. It says pending home sales sink in February, setting a grim tone as housing market enters key spring season. It says setting a soft tone for the usually busy spring season. Pending home sales, which measure signed contract on existing homes, fell 4.1% in February compared with January. This is the fourth straight month of declines in pending sales, which are an indicator of future closing, 1 and 2 months out. The median monthly payment on a new mortgage is now taking a much larger share of a typical consumer income. It jumped 8.3% in February compared with January. So all the indications, housing prices are going to go down. And again, right now, my recommendation, I'm not a financial advisor, is to wait. Time is on your side. I know it may be difficult. You have 4 or 5 kids and you want to get out of your 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. But wait, you'll get a deal. You'll get a better deal than if you bought today. That's my recommendation. Okay, let's go to stocks. Dow was up 0.44% to 34,861.26. Year to date, the Dow is down 4.06%. Today is March 25th, 2022. The S&P finished up 0.51% to 4,543.06. Year to date, the S&P is down 4.68%. The Nasdaq finished down today 0.16% to 14,169.3. For the year, Nasdaq is down 9.43%. Oil finished up 1.39% to $113.90 per barrel. Apparently, it was trading down earlier today, but the Yemen Houthis, which is a terrorist group, attacked an Aramco facility in the Saudi city of Jeddah. So it swung from negative to positive as a result. Gold was down 0.13% to $1,954.84 per ounce. Silver was down 0.44% to $25.40 per ounce. Bitcoin is trading at $44,442.92. Ethereum is trading at $3,107.35, and XRP is trading at 83 cents. Russia is contemplating settling its oil trades in Bitcoin. It says here, Pavel Navalny, the chair of the Duma's Committee on Energy, floated the idea of trading Russian oil in Bitcoin. He says, "We have been proposing to China for a long time to switch to settlements in national currencies for rubles and yuan. With Turkey, it would be lira and rubles," Navalny said. "You can also trade Bitcoins." So he's floating the idea, and we shall see with that. So you have a good weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. And again, thanks for listening.